you are triggering your mind to release dopamine.
It does take a level of self-awareness to kill your ego. Sometimes it can be hard to sit there for 15 minutes and read a book.
Habits are the small decisions you make and actions you perform every day.
Attention is the new currency. So I'm 30 right now. The 40-year-old Chris would be thanking me for it, right?
Habits account for 40% of our behaviors on any given day.
Most of the secrets, most of the wealth of the world is in reading the books. What's going on, Lightwell family? Welcome back to another episode. Super excited to dive into today's topic. I want to give you guys a quick statistic about habits, all right? Research shows that 40% of our everyday actions result from habits, the things that we do without even thinking, all right? So you guys know that there's such thing as good habits and there's such thing as bad habits. So today on this episode, we want to dive into some of the habits that we have developed over the years, some habits that we have studied from successful people, and how you can continue to develop healthy habits for yourself. Let's get it. All right, Lightwell family. Like we said, we're going to dive into habits today and have a phenomenal conversation about developing healthy habits. Got my main man, Carlos, in the building. How you feeling, man?
Man, another great episode, another great topic to talk about. I think that this one is really the devil's in the details in this one. And I think we're going to start to see how we can help our community build these better habits.
For sure. And before we get too deep into it, if this is your first time listening, this show is all about personal development and mental health for the Latino community. Something that we all know that's not spoken about very much. And we all know growing up, we probably never even heard of mental health or personal development. So we want to bring this show to y'all, just breaking down some of the things we've learned over the years and some of the things that we're implementing. And of course, once again, we're talking about habits today.
Yeah. So really quick, I'll start by just saying habits are the small decisions you make and actions you perform every day. According to researchers at Duke University, habits account for 40% of our behaviors on any given day. So 40%. And I'd say that most people go predominantly throughout their life without building or driving awareness around their habits.
That's crazy. So again, the habits are things that we do pretty much without even thinking. So if you think about 40% of your day is, you're doing things without even thinking, you better hope that those 40% are good habits. All right. You're at least trying to achieve good habits.
Absolutely. And I think really it's about driving that self-awareness of, does this habit help me become the type of person that I desire to be? Obviously, as we're evolving, right, you have to keep that mindset and that vision of who you want to be and aspire to continue to grow. But ultimately, these habits will either help you or deter you from getting there. And then, habits that reinforce your desired identity are good. Habits that conflict with your desired identity are bad. So delineating the two, and then ultimately, if you're watching this, we're going to help you try to build some good habits.
Yeah, for sure. We're going to dive into, what are good habits? What are some of the ones you should be focusing on? And maybe what are some bad habits, even from our experience that we've eliminated from our life that maybe you could do the same?
Yeah. I mean, I'll start there, like just bad habits, right? I've definitely had my fair share of bad habits. But as I've evolved, I've learned that I need to shed those. And so a few that I think of is, indulging in, alcohol as a way to escape, right? That was a bad habit. And one that, when I was growing up, I saw it at home. My parents, they had parties, had fun times. As I got into adult life, I worked at restaurants and bars. And so it was something that was identified or something that was presented to me as a good habit. But as I learned and I matured and I evolved, I realized that ultimately this has no benefits.
For sure.
So just one example. But
and I think not to brush over that, something big, if you guys are listening, I think environment plays a big role into your habits, right?
100%.
You're growing up with alcohol around, you know what I'm saying, in the family.
Yeah, I mean,
but at the very least, you were in an environment, you were working in an environment that had alcohol around you. And like you said, like it was supposed to be something good for you, right?
Absolutely. And I think it was, growing up, it wasn't like, as prevalent, right? It wasn't as in my face, but as I was working in those other environments, it definitely was. Mm. And it was, a stress, it was presented as a stress release. Mm. But ultimately, habits are reliable solutions to your problems and stresses you face regularly. So if you constantly are using alcohol to, mask your problems or to reduce stress, you're actually creating more stress.
For sure. 100%. 100%.
But yeah, I think ultimately, as we dive into this, like, whenever you face a problem repeatedly, your brain creates a habit to solve it. And that's where, as you start to build these positive habits, you have to start to realize, like, what positive reinforcements am I making every day?
That's big. I love that. But let's dive into some different areas that we should be focusing on. I know we mentioned, like, look, alcohol, drugs, let's keep it real, porn, especially with men. That's something that we struggle with a lot. These are some different habits that, and it's funny because you said earlier that, like, some of these habits are like a release, right?
Yeah.
And they're all kind of that, right? They're all kind of like presented as a release, right? To release from stress.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think ultimately what you're doing is that you are triggering your mind to release dopamine. Right?
That's what it is. Yeah.
And ultimately what happens is that you become, what happens really is that you become hypersensitive or desensitized to certain dopamine releases.
Now we're talking.
Right.
Now it gets deep. Now one joint don't do it.
Yeah. Right.
You know what I'm saying? Exactly. You got to get two of them.
You build up that tolerance, right? And you build up, it's like, when you're in the gym, right? You start building calluses on your hands, right? It's a defense mechanism.
For sure.
Right. It's helping you get stronger and better. But the same thing happens in those counter positions where you start to induce alcohol, pornography, other things, and you then become less stimulated by the real world.
For sure.
So ultimately, I think as we focus on building healthy habits, one thing before we dive into these areas, it's that you have to try it, you have to learn, you have to fail, try again. Right? So building that cyclical process is how you build your confidence and your competence with your habits.
Yeah, I love that. Try, learn, fail, try again. Man, we live in a society, people stop at the first one, try. Yeah. You know, they don't even want to learn. They definitely don't want to fail, and most likely not going to try again.
Absolutely.
So I like that you broke that down.
Yeah. And I think, it's first finding those areas where you see, kind of an immediate benefit in the shorter term. Right. And then stacking those, we'll get to that, right? Stacking those over time so that you reinforce the habits. But let's talk about areas to build healthy habits.
Let's do it.
First one I can relate with is eating. And I've shared before, in stressful times, I over-index one way or the other. Sometimes I'll overeat, sometimes I won't eat. Right. And it just depends on the severity of my stress, my anxiety levels, but building healthy habits with eating is really important. I think also understanding how you eat, right? Understanding that are you eating for fuel? Are you eating for fun? Is this fog eating and you're subconsciously just shoving food down your mouth without, those eating habits are critical and something that I've struggled with.
Are you bored? That's something big as well.
Yeah. And so, but understanding that eating for fuel is important.
It's important, yeah.
Not to say that those other areas aren't, but I guess bringing it back, eating habits are super important.
Yeah, I think reframing, like what you just said, how you're eating, right? You're eating for fuel. So not only are you being conscious of like when you eat, how you eat, but what you're eating as well, right?
Without a doubt.
So I like that. And a lot of these is like reframing how you approach your habits, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, just generating more self-awareness. And then I'll share shortly, I built an identity around my eating, right? And my diet, which has helped me refocus and prioritize.
Okay. Love it. Love it.
Another area to build a healthy habit with is focus. Talk a little bit about that.
Focus, man. It's huge. And especially, again, this society that we live in, it's so easy to be distracted. We got the TV, it's 2024 right now, presidential election, things are going on, social media, text messages, just there's so many different distractions in the world that can throw you off your focus. For me, we spoke about it multiple times. I'm in a season of trying to eliminate distraction and regain my focus.
Yeah.
And declutter my mind. And it can be doing things as simple as like, my desk is a mess right now. Let me just get rid of everything that I don't need on this desk, these Post-it notes, these extra pens, get rid of it all, right? Same thing with social media, same thing with, whatever in your area of your life that you want to regain clarity and focus on. It's important to eliminate those distractions.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think focus is so key because, to your point, everyone is bidding on our attention.
100%.
Right.
Yeah.
And ultimately remaining focused is something that becomes more difficult, and putting together those habits where you have time to focus, where you have time to declutter your mind. I like how you put that. And really organize not only your thoughts, but your actions, and give yourself the ability and the space to prioritize what's most important to you, based off of your values, your principles, but then also execute. I think that is all entailed into focus.
Yeah. And it's crazy because, we paid attention to a lot of entrepreneurs, and something that you'll hear a lot of entrepreneurs say is attention is a new currency.
Yeah.
So there is these business owners that are intentionally trying to, like you said, bidding on your attention, right?
Yeah.
Bidding on your focus, right? So you got to keep that in mind.
Yeah. And honestly, if you're watching this, you're dedicating your focus to learning. So
yeah.
Right. Appreciate you tuning in. I'm gonna touch on this next one, which is health, right? And that is a myriad of things. I think fitness, right, is one that comes first to mind. But building healthy habits around fitness is key. One thing that I'll say is I've learned that I am most accountable and productive when I work out with others.
That's good.
And finding those healthy habits, those, the ability to work out with other people, find the circles and the groups that help you accomplish these goals, and then building those habits into your day to day.
I love that, and I want to hit on a couple things. So I love that you said that because it does take a level of self-awareness to kill your ego, to be like, I want to work out with people that may be faster than me, maybe can run more miles than me, stronger than me, but I want to learn. I want to be in this environment, right? I want to be around these people to grow.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, for me, I recently joined a run club. I enjoy F45 and Orange Theory Fitness. And anything that a habit is tied to some type of social connection is really how I double down on that habit.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, with me, I'm going to go back to how I reframe my mind around fitness. So for me, it's, I love to look good, feel good. But my mindset around fitness and health is, and we spoke about this before, doing the things that, so I'm 30 right now, the 40-year-old Chris would be thanking me for, right? Thinking ahead, thinking about my kids, thinking in the future, is what I'm going to do going to produce a seed in the future that's going to allow me to be fruitful, right? With my
100%.
health, physically, mentally, am I going to be sharp in 10 years, right? So with that attitude, makes it a little bit more simple to, push myself at the gym or making the right decisions around my health.
Yeah, I agree. I think the last one that we'll talk on, which I think is critical to personal development, is building healthy habits around reading, right? Reading and personal development. But I think reading is critical because it impacts your ability to write, communicate, and express yourself. And so by reading and building that habit, you are then seeing that ripple effect into other areas of your life. Talk a little bit about how you've built this habit and how you continue to reinforce it.
Look, I'm going to go back to the focus, man. Like we're so distracted nowadays. Sometimes it can be hard to sit there for 15 minutes and read a book.
Yeah.
Like you got to put your phone in the other room. You got to like really lock in to read. But no, reading has been, phenomenal for me. They say most of the things, most of the secrets, most of the wealth of the world is in reading the books, right? Popping open those books and reading. So it's allowed us to build community, fellowship, and, diving into different books has also allowed me to gain perspective from people.
Yeah.
What I see, what I'm reading may not be the same for you. And we come together, we collaborate, and, we build more, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, I'm able to get your perspective, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. I think to your point, like, it's building that habit, but then also rejoicing in commensurating with others about, not only your progress, but how they're progressing, and then you share perspectives. So I think that's all critical, and especially for the Latino community, which, I mean, we're so community oriented that I think once you start to, build these habits, then you'll be able to share them with others. Yeah. And I think that's where the sweet spot is for Latinos.
Yeah, you just brought up something key, and we're going to transition into habit stacking in a second and what that is. But I remember you went to Panama as well. We both went to Panama, and I think it's on a Sunday. They shut down like a part of the city to where everybody's out exercising, riding their bikes, and it's part of their culture, it's part of the community, right? And that's something you don't see very often, especially in the Latino community where we're building community around healthy habits. Usually it's like we're all getting around and having a drink.
Yeah.
But I always I'll never forget that out there on I think it's on a Sunday, they close down the streets and everybody's riding their bikes and running, doing something healthy and positive.
Yeah. I remember the park, the main park adjacent to downtown in the in the water.
Yep.
I remember seeing people running and exercising, and I think ultimately it's about building that balance, but knowing that in order to prioritize this, it has to be a habit.
All right, cool. So, Carlos, we broke down some negative habits. We broke down some positive habits and some that we should be investing more into. How do we take ourselves to the next level, right? How do we continue to build momentum and stack onto the habits that we're developing?
Yeah, no, this is a great topic. And we read a book called Atomic Habits that we recommend for everyone.
We mentioned it multiple times on this show. It's a phenomenal book.
Yeah, James Clear has built a very lucrative business around just providing people tools to build habits. And one of the tools that he talks about is habit stacking. Rather than pairing your new habit with a particular time and location, you pair it with a current habit. And so if running is your thing, right, then in the morning or the night before, you should set out your running shoes and your equipment and everything.
That's big.
So that when you wake up to do that habit, you don't have to think about it. You don't have
That's the key.
You're prepared.
Yeah.
Right.
That goes back to the initial statistic that we gave. 40% of our everyday action results from habit. So if we can stack on those new habits and not think about, these different things, then it's going to help us out tremendously. I know for me, when it comes to habit stacking in the morning, wake up, that's the first habit. The second thing is, okay, what can I stack on that? Okay, prayer time. Stack that. What's after that? Going to the gym. So you kind of just continue to build those habits and those for me, that morning routine, for me to have a great day.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, very similar. It's funny. My wife, a few years back, she was like, "You wake up so early in the morning. What do you do?" And I'm like, "Well, I have a routine, and I, have dedicated times. It's usually either 60 minutes for each, or at least 30 for prayer, reading, gratitude, right? Just getting positive affirmation in the morning. First thing I do. The next one is working out, right? If I don't work out in the morning, I won't work out the rest of the day because I'm too busy. It has to be prioritized for me, and it has to be in those first 3 hours. And then the last one is more of meditation and just putting more calmness before I start my day. If I was to open my email or my messages first thing in the morning,
thrown off,
complete. And don't get me wrong, these are all continuous goals. There are mornings where I do that
for sure,
and it throws a wrench in the whole rest of the day,
bro.
And so it's about that awareness, but also implementation, execution. So those are some of the early morning habit stacks that I do.
And so we basically just broke down a simple habit stacking formula that you guys can implement. So again, every time I do X, the X is the existing part of your routine. Then I will do Y. The Y is a new thing you want to add to your routine. So all you're doing is just stacking up the habits, right? The healthy habits.
Absolutely. And the last thing I'll mention here about habit stacking, it's also about creating identity habits. These are key because this is how you reinforce your habits subconsciously.
That's big.
Through positive affirmation and identity. So for me, I am constantly reiterating that, I am a vegan, I'm a reader, I'm an athlete.
You are that thing.
I am that thing, right? And so for me, having a vegan identity is more or less reinforcing the choices that I make around my diet. Being an identity around being a reader, it's that I need to prioritize this and I need to make time for it. And then lastly, being an athlete, right? I think an athlete isn't just physical, it's also mental, and it's emotional, it's spiritual. So building up your athletic ability in all of those aspects to perform, deliver, and execute.
Yeah, 100%. I love that you broke that down because it's so easy for us to say, man, I'm not good at this. I'm not a reader.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, let's take a step back and let's shift our mindset to like, what if you are? What if you can be, right?
Yeah.
Once you do that, you're opening up your brain to possibilities of what it can accomplish, right? And you're giving your brains the opportunity for different routes to figure things out, right?
Absolutely.
By you saying you're not something, you're shutting yourself down from doing that thing.
And I love primetime Deion Sanders, right? He says, you got to want it, you got to work it, you got to win it. That's it, right? And those are the ways that you need to attack your habits and making sure that 40% of your activities every day are actually moving the needle towards who you want to be.
Love that. All right, Latin Wealth family. If you guys like this episode, we appreciate if you guys can share this episode with one other person out there that needs to build some healthier habits. And would love to know if you can comment down below, what are some habits that you want to continue to build on, replace? And as always, we'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.